Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Queen Edith Community Forum hustings for City Council elections on the 3rd of May. I'm Sam Davis, I'm the Chair of the Community Forum, and it's a great pleasure to see so many of you here. I'm going to hand over to Chris, who's going to be chairing the hustings, but I just wanted to say a couple of opening remarks. Some of them are fairly mundane, along the lines of, we're not expecting a fire alarm, so if the alarm goes, please could you leave and exit out onto the building, and also if you need a loo, there's one at the back of the hall. Something slightly less mundane is I'm hoping everyone who's in the distribution area for this has had one in the last couple of days. There's an appeal from me on page 3 for some more people to come forward and get actually actively involved with the forum. There are people here tonight who've helped out at our events in the past, but we're really looking to kind of increase our capacity this year. I'm very happy to announce that we found someone to act as our treasurer since this went to press, which is great news. But we'll be organising a meeting, I think, towards the end of May, once we have our new councillor in situ as well, to bring together councillors and the community forum and try and work out what the priorities are, how we and you as part of the community forum can get involved in doing more locally. So please keep an eye open for that message and that date. And that's me done. So, Chris.
I did. Toilets.
Of course she doesn't miss a thing, does she? No. Thank you very much, Sam. So, welcome everybody to the Queen Edith Community Forum hustings. Nice to see a good turnout again. What's become a bit of a tradition now. I think this is our 4th one. So that's rather wonderful. And I'm sure Lady Rifles can just you may have seen one or two people coming in tonight, shaking hands and saying congratulations. If any of you are wondering what that's all about, several people here know exactly what it's all about. There's been a very large community campaign over recent months to get a stay of execution, or if not a complete stop of execution, on the demolition of the house on the corner of Hills Road and Queen Edith's Way. It went in front of the Council Planning Committee on Wednesday, and I'm delighted on behalf of the whole campaign and everyone who's put so much time and effort into it, and several people have really pushed the boat out on this one. I'm delighted to say that the Council Planning Committee rejected the application to demolish the house, which was, I think, something of a surprise, but actually wonderful news for everybody concerned. I mean, it may just be the opening battle in a war, who knows, or maybe we may have won, we just don't know yet. But that's great news. And I'd particularly like to thank all of our existing 4 councillors for the effort they've put in, and at least two or more of the candidates here tonight, which have also put time and effort in, which is wonderful. So it just goes to show that the City Council, the position that our Queen Edith's councillor has on it, does make a difference and can do things. So it's very easy to dismiss sometimes local council elections as not being important, but councillors here really made a difference. And I'm sure the residents who organised the campaign would be the first to say that. So that's great. So quickly just run down the order we're going to do things tonight. We'll have a couple of introductory questions, general ones, which I've already written and given to the candidates in advance. And they'll each have a couple of minutes to answer those after they've introduced themselves. Then at about 7:45, we'll have a break for 10 minutes. And we can all help ourselves to tea and coffee, and there's some cake at the back and everything, and that's all on us. And what we're going to do this year, rather than have hands-up questions and people disappointed, I've put some pieces of paper out on the side and some pens. So during the break, if you want to write down any questions you've got that you didn't have answered in the first half that you'd like to hear, do write on them, put them in the pink bucket. Sam will go through them very quickly and efficiently and see if there's a couple of themes, and if she can do that, there'll be the questions for the second half. So we hope that's a sort of fair way of doing things. I know in the past 1 or 2 people have wanted to ask questions, but didn't really feel comfortable with standing up and doing so. So this is a way we can get everybody covered. And then we'll have closing statements from the candidates, and I hope to get everything finished by about 8:30, if that's okay with everybody. So, without further ado, I'll briefly introduce our 4 candidates, and I'll get them to introduce themselves for a minute or 2 each. In absolutely alphabetical order, Joel Chalfen, Manus Deb, Dan Grief, and Colin McGurty. So what we'll do for introductions, we'll just go along the line, and then I have my usual bag of Lego bricks to sort out the order that people go in for each event. So is that okay, Joel, to kick off? To introduce yourself? Thank you.
Well, I'll start that. Good evening, everybody. I've been told to hold this to my chin, just as Chris was doing. I thought it looked rather good, so I'm going to try it out myself. Thank you first to all of you for coming this evening. Thank you also to Chris, Sam, and all those at the Community Forum for setting this event up, which is always a great success and a real pleasure to be part of. So thank you to you all. My name is Joel Chalfen. It does feel very odd. It all looks good. I'm going to try it. My name is Joel Chalfen. I am a lecturer in drama at the Faculty of Education, just across the road, and a fellow of Homerton College. I also run an arts charity, which operates in London and Cambridge. We're currently running a theatre project with local communities in Cambridge, exploring the benefits and challenges of speaking more than one language. It's a community programme which is aimed at reaching out to a whole variety of different communities and finding their stories and sharing those. And to some extent it's about a research into what it's like to come to Cambridge and have English as a second language. It's also, though, of course, a celebration of diversity within Cambridge. And it's also, in some ways, an investigation into what it means to be a welcoming city. One thing that the Green Party stands for locally, very, very strongly, is for Cambridge to be proud of its international and global community, and to welcome people from all around the world and continue welcoming people from all around the world, that this may be a safe and happy home for them. I have stood here before. Some of you may recognise me from previous occasions. Standing for the Green Party, for me, always means one thing. Well, it means a few things. But we always stand in the Green Party as a party of opposition. A party that is committed to asking difficult questions, challenging complacency and party politics, standing up for local residents and not being bound by rules of a game that doesn't necessarily represent the people who are being represented. And all around the country, up and down, Green councillors are doing just that, seeing things from a slightly different perspective and often challenging the normative responsiveness to the challenges of a very complicated, complex global world. The Green Party is obviously famous for its environmental campaign, its environmental basis, but that's just a starting point, a fundamental starting point for understanding that we face global challenges, but we face them at a local level. And it's vital and central both to the Green Party, and why I am happy and proud to be their representative, that the challenges that we face are to be faced based on the local knowledge. This document, this Green Party manifesto, offers 10 key points that I think do make a programme for a safer, fairer, more sustainable future for everybody. But above all, it gives those of us who seek to represent the party at a local level a free hand, a chance to be independent in responding to the local needs, with a global vision, but nonetheless with an independence to respond to what is needed locally. So what does that mean? That means putting resource and supporting local initiatives, whether that's local business or local community ventures. It's about supporting local resilience, making communities strong, supporting local sustainability, whether that's about local transport solutions, local food solutions, or local care solutions, that the communities that we're supporting are strong, resilient and sustainable for the future. That's why I'm standing, and I look forward to having this debate with you tonight.
Thank you very much.
First of all, thank you, Chris, Sam, and other members of Cambridge Community Forum. Thank you very much for organizing this event. I've attended this last year before. It's been my pleasure. Many of you may already know me. I'm Manas Deb, your Conservative candidate for City Council election. I'm a chemical engineer and a local businessman. I live at the heart of Queen Edith's ward in Nightingale Avenue with my wife and son. I've been a community worker since last 16 years, and I'm passionate to make a difference in the community, and if elected, I will definitely try to bring some changes in the Queen Edith's ward. I still remember the year before when I joined Conservative Party in Queen Edith's ward. The reason I joined because I saw a massive parking problem in Queen Edith's ward. And since then I've seen parking problem is growing in many parts of Queen Edith's ward, notably in the areas near Edinburgh's Hospital and opposite Hills Road Sixth Form College. Local residents, they have difficulties parking near their homes, and I've seen, as many of you, many Edinburgh's visitors, Hills Road Sixth Form College visitors and leisure centre visitors would block and gridlock the residential streets, the pavement of many residential streets, and that makes it difficult for local residents to park their car. Now, I'm campaigning to see reduced parking charges at Edinburgh's multi-story car parking to make it more affordable. I've requested Edinburgh's Trust to introduce parking fees for their employees based on their income level. I'm also working closely with the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Mayor to see that the South train station at Edinburgh site is delivered on time before 2022. And I have had a recent meeting with him earlier this week, and he has informed me that this project is pretty much on track, and he will try to deliver before 2022. Thank you very much.
So now on to the new boys, because this is our first election, so we try to replicate your passion there and your experience at these local hustings. So my name is Dan Grief, and I'm standing as the Labour candidate here in Queen Edith this year for the city election. And somebody asked me recently, well, why are you standing in Queen Edith? And it really is quite a personal connection for me. So firstly, I stood in the general election in 2015 and 17. Heidi beat me. Thanks for coming. Secondly, I've been an active campaigner here for many years. So in 2013, I joined with local residents to oppose going against my own party line on the development of Watts Causeway. And more personally than that still, I met my wife here and fell in love and moved to Tillyard Way. After getting married, people said, well, why didn't you come back and live here? Well, I can't afford to. As a teacher, and my wife's a doctor, she's an aspiring consultant, there's no way we can afford to live in this area. And I want to make Queen Edith a better place for everyone. I'm completely focused on making this area better for the community that I've grown to love, and the friends that I've got to know here have become really a connection in my life that I really want to nurture. And that's why I'm standing. So in this election I have 5 pledges, but they really come down to 3 things. And these are things that you can hold me accountable to in 4 years' time if I'm selected as your councillor. Firstly, it's about investment. That's the first theme. It's about trying to stop some of the national cuts that are affecting our ward and protecting parts of our community, such as children's centres, and I know that's something that I've campaigned with local activists from other parties on. It's secondly about development. And I was so proud the last few days that we have worked together as a team with residents and other parties to stand up to antisocial development that doesn't do anything for a local community, but it's a high cost and there's no affordable housing. And finally, it comes down to transport, making sure that Queen Edith works better for everyone so that we can deal with some of our parking problems and the congestion in our streets. So I'll work with the biomedical campus. I will not allow Queen Edith to become collateral damage for the extending growth of the biomedical campus. And I will also make sure that we work together to stand up against development which is poor for the community, but we have development that actually gives something to the character and allows people, like teachers and doctors, to come and live here. So in the future, your children and grandchildren have the same chances that you have as well. So that's why I'm standing and ask for your vote on the 3rd of May. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming out this evening to hear all of your candidates for the City Council election. It's a huge honour to have been selected by members of the party to stand in Queen Edith's, and I'm really looking forward to the election next week and the last week of door knocking and speaking to all of you. My name is Colin McGurty, and I've lived in Cambridge for around 20 years now. Before that, I met my wife while we were both studying in Newcastle, and I was brought up in Suffolk. I work as an IT professional, and my wife works for an international conservation charity. Although it's my first time standing as a candidate, I have a history as an effective community campaigner, campaigning against issues of social injustice. Particularly, I was successful in saving the jobs of over 50 school crossing guards across Cambridgeshire, which were threatened with cuts in the 2016 County Council budget. That was an outcome that I was incredibly proud of. And then, sadly this year, we've been unable to persuade the County Council to change direction on cuts to children's centres, which we've seen biting in our own community at Homerton Children's Centre just recently at Easter. That was despite me raising a petition of 4,000 signatures from across the county, and I was very sad that those people's voices were not heard in that discussion. Those are the kind of community-focused services that a compassionate council would be supporting for the long term. Instead of that, I see our local city council introducing charges for shop mobility service, and that's something that's going to exclude the least well-off 20% of disabled people from the city centre. I would personally challenge the other candidates here this evening to come out and oppose those charges with me and try to get the City Council to change direction on what is an unnecessary charge. I think we can work harder and we can raise that money from private finance. I believe that I have the integrity and the work ethic and the compassion to make a fantastic councillor here for you in Queen Edith. There's an awful lot that we need to be getting on with, and the funding for that is going to be tighter than ever. So we must fight for every penny. I'll be a listening and hard-working councillor for all residents in Queen Edith, and I thank you very much for your listening this evening.
Thank you very much, everyone. So, as I said, I've got a couple of questions now, which I hope will cover some general bases, which I'd like to ask the candidates to answer in maybe 90 seconds or so each if they can. That would be terrific. The first one I'd like to put to the candidates is, do you have a strategic vision, rather than a specific policy, that would guide the decisions you will make if you were elected as a councillor? Is there something you can think of? And we'll start with Alice.
I do have few strategic visions. If I'm elected, hopefully I can implement those. To start with, care home. I have been campaigning for this issue since last 3 years. I deeply care for elderly people in the community, and whenever I get time, I try to regularly visit care homes in Queen Edith. I have seen in last few years, when I interact with the older people and the people that I spend time, with dementia patients, they find care homes are very expensive and unaffordable. If I'm elected, I would like to see more affordable care homes in Queen Edith. My second strategic vision would be housing. Housing in Cambridge is beyond reach for many. And I would like to see more affordable houses for teachers, care workers, nurses, and also for first-time young buyers. I've met Cambridgeshire Mayor this week in his office, and he has assured me that he would like to see more affordable houses coming up in Cambridge to meet the current need. He has also informed me that £170 million is approved over a period of 5 years for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and that will include housing, shared housing accommodation as well as rented accommodation. And I'm thinking this will definitely help solving the housing problem. My third strategic vision is traffic congestion and parking, which I've already addressed. I've been campaigning last 3 years to address the traffic congestion problem in Edinbrooks and near Hills Road Sixth Form College, and also the reduced parking charges for Edinbrooks employees, which is most important. The fourth point is burglaries, and I would like to invite other candidates as well to join me to curb burglaries, crimes and thefts in Queen Edith. In recent times, Queen Edith has seen many burglaries, thefts and crimes, and I have personally visited the families who are affected by burglaries, and I have also taken up this matter with our Honourable Local MP Heidi and our Police and Crime Commissioner, and both of them have assured me that I could arrange a meeting, community meeting, where they are more than happy to come and address the issue. And Jason Abel-White said he will explain his plan and action, what he is doing, how police is tackling crimes, thefts. So once I'm elected, I promise within 1 month, I would like to see that happening. Library is a great place, and I encourage children to visit libraries more and more to borrow books. And for that reason, I'm campaigning to save libraries. But having said that, libraries should also change with time, because time is changed, reading habits are changing. So libraries should go a little more digital to attract more children. Otherwise, they will lose the number of children visiting libraries. Community center. I've been living here last 20 years. I think community center is an amazing concept where you go and meet people from different backgrounds, you make friends, you organize charity event, sports, cultural program, drama, fundraising, coffee morning. But unfortunately, Queen Edith doesn't have a community center for people from all backgrounds. And this is very important. And if elected, I will work with council to see one is built as soon as possible. Children's center. My heart breaks for thousands and thousands of residents in Queen Edith who may possibly face a cut for Homerton Children's Center, especially for babies and children who from disadvantaged family who may be affected and they need the help most. I stand shoulder to shoulder with Queen Edith residents to oppose this possible cut. If I am elected, I will coordinate with county councillor and the leader of county councillor to see if the decision for this particular children's center can be reversed. I think these are my strategic visions, and on that basis I would ask everyone, please vote for Conservative, vote for me on 3rd May. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm just going to start by picking up on a couple of things that Manus has mentioned. So he's issued a small challenge there to candidates, and I think it's important that I respond. So in terms of burglaries in the area, there was a huge spike in burglaries over the winter this year. That was raised at the South Area Committee, and we had the police come back to report back to us about what they were doing about it. They've worked incredibly hard over the last 4 months to make sure that every officer at Parkside has been involved with reducing the number of burglaries in the area, particularly in the southern fringe of the ward. I asked a question on behalf of a resident of Almonds Avenue who'd been burgled multiple times, both the house and their car, and they were greatly assured to hear that the police have been working hard on it. I was able to give them the report that they'd written for us, which was incredibly detailed, and also with figures in there demonstrating that the efforts that they've put in have been successful in reducing the number of burglaries in the area back down to what they, and I quote, consider a normal level. And we can't hope to get it down to zero because they obviously have other priorities as well. So in their words, I think, and Josh picked up on this in the Cambridge News, they described it as the storm was over. The other thing that Manus mentioned was with regard to children's centres. Obviously I'm not at all happy with the party that he represents forcing through those really cruel cuts at the County Council. But I welcome him to join the campaign to try to get more funding for our children's centres. In particular, you might be interested to know that I've been speaking to Simon Bywater, the chairman of the Children and Young People Committee, asking if he would provide just £3,000 for a single morning per week for a reliable session at Homerton Children's Centre, so that people in the area that can't make it all the way across to Fawcett and Trumpington know that there's at least one place that they can go, and they know that session's going to be on. I don't believe in the strategy of pop-up sessions in libraries. I don't think anybody's going to feel that that's something that really meets their needs. I should probably read something from my notes at some point, because one of the issues, the strategic issue from me, is that at the moment this area is suffering from uncontrolled development and the expansion of the city, which has been forced upon the people of Queen Edith. Whilst in the north and the east of the city there are undeveloped brownfield sites at the sewage works and at the airport, and the owners of those sites will be willing to work with us over time to build new city quarters. Now, along with these city quarters, we would be supporting the development of properly integrated public transport system. The Cambridge North railway station is open already. Cambridge South station we know is going to come, following Lib Dems campaigning on the issue for 14 years now. And along with those, and the Chisholm Trail cycle highway, we would be looking to provide better, more comfortable, and ideally subsidised buses, because they're prohibitively expensive at the moment. For many families, instinctively know that it's cheaper for them to drive into the city centre than put their family on the bus. And the reason that we need to do these things is not just because of the number of people that we know are going to come into the area, but the way in which they're going to come in. Because ultimately it comes down to the pollution that we're causing in our city. Last year, up to 70 people died in this city from pollution-related conditions. So we can't just ask everybody to stop driving in, because we have an impenetrably expensive housing market. So we need to be building. And by 2030, there's going to be up to 40,000 new jobs in this area, and they're going to require around 18,000 new houses to house those people. So we need to be building communities and not just jobs, so that people can live near their work, near good schools and near the city centre. That's how we reduce pollution, through long-term planning and vision for communities, not a 0% affordable gold rush for developers. If we can diffuse the pressure on services in Queen Edith, then we can allow our children to breathe cleaner air, older residents can feel safer in their homes, and everyone can walk, cycle, drive, safe from the dangers caused when cars, bikes and pedestrians mix. So these changes, some of it's inevitable. We know that the biomedical campus is coming, we know that those workers are coming to the area. But we mustn't be held hostage to it. I want everyone in Cambridge to have the chance to benefit from a fair and prosperous city. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, some eloquent answers so far. Thank you to both of you for addressing some key issues that I think all of us would agree need tackling. The question was about strategy, a strategic vision, and I'm going to answer simply and directly to that, which might make my answer a little shorter than the others. For me, a strategy is a single vision. It's something that you hold in your mind all the time that can give you a sense of how to answer these individual various concerns that you're going to address. And of the various strategies that the Green Party puts out there for us to consider, I think most useful for me is the strategy that prioritises the rights of citizens and the environment over those of corporations. This is a single calling point that reminds us that we need to look at the most vulnerable, at the individuals, over and above the vested interests of larger bodies and corporations who don't necessarily understand the needs of individuals. This, for me, contains a strategic whole that will answer to all those questions of travel, transport, of education and childcare that we've heard about. I'd like to give an example. This week the Green Councillor from the Market Ward, Oscar Gillespie, presented to Council a proposal for a sustainable food policy for the city. It was a very thorough, well-prepared document that was put to Council with due caution for what would be a good discussion. It was readily put to one side because it was felt it was too all-encompassing. It was too complicated because actually a sustainable food policy touches upon issues of transport, of local economy, of the needs of the poorest in our society and the needs of everybody as well. And the reason why the council was unable to debate it was because it was too holistic, too complete in addressing a lot of issues. This is the kind of policy, strategic policy that the Green Party is interested in provoking councillors with, provoking council and government with. Policies that are overarching, holistic and complete, that piece all the jigsaw pieces together and don't just firefight or deal with things individually. And that's the strategic policy that I would have behind my approach to being a councillor.
Thank you, Joel. I totally agree with what you say about strategy. Strategy is not piecemeal, it's not minor solutions to problems which push a problem onto another area. It's the vision, and the vision is essential. I'm glad you addressed that point, because I agree. It is a vision, and as I said, I have three main areas that I want to focus in as part of the strategy. But one of them is actually beyond Queen Edith's, and about the children's centres. I don't agree with localism on that issue, because children need help everywhere. And yes, Homerton requires help, and I'll do everything I can, as I have done already. I've spoken at Shire Hall. I asked the county councillors there why they decided to give themselves a pay rise, or at the same time they cut the funding for the children's centres. But I believe that that money should be put into the children's centres across the whole city. That's real investment in all of our young people, and I think that is the most important thing that the councils can provide, and they're just quite frankly not doing at the moment. And that is a social injustice. If we don't fight social injustice, then what's the point in anything else? The other thing though is, when it comes to investment, it's about investing in our local area. And that comes down to the kinds of transport solutions and the kinds of development that we have as well. I want to steal a line here from Antony Carpen, when he said that so much of Cambridge development is etch-a-sketch design with maximum profit and minimum cost. And I think that completely sums up development in our city right now. We know that we have to have growth in our area, and we accept that. We accept that Cambridge is growing. That's also part of my strategy. But it can be done in a way that does keep into the character of the area, and it provides social and affordable housing. And it's very important that we have both those elements. Otherwise, we're going to have a city where people are having to commute for miles outside to come into our area, and then we wonder why our streets are getting clogged up with pollution, with cars, with people not being able to get to their works. And then that kind of brings me on then really to how we do that in the most green, sustainable way we can. And with regards to transport, I honestly believe we need fewer cars on our streets. And maybe that's a radical thing to say. Maybe that means in some cases making driving harder in our city. But actually, and Wendy Blythe, I'm glad you're here this evening, as I learned from the event the other day from George Ferguson, that actually cities are for people. And actually, if we're avoiding that issue and making it for cars only, and not putting investment into bicycle networks and pedestrian access, then really we're missing the point completely. And that's why the strategy that I have is holistic. Now, the critique I would have about some of the changes we've seen in the ward recently is that we see some streets are having parking restrictions put in, and then their neighbours are paying the price as they find their streets are getting clogged up. And so the next street gets sorted out, pushing the problem to the streets after that. Now, I know it's not an easy problem, and I really respect those people who have been working on it so far, but I think we do need to have a holistic approach. That includes working with our local institutions to make sure we can take traffic off our streets. For instance, eligible students using Park and Ride at Hills Road. It also means we improve the outpatient parking and work with Adam Brooks so that people aren't parking in our ward, and we do make it tougher around the station end of the ward so that people aren't parking locally and then getting the train to London. That might make some hard challenges, but it has to be a holistic approach. And finally, I want this all to be done in the most sustainable and green way. Queen Edith's Way was under threat of losing its cherry trees and its verges for the cycle path. I'd rather see cars finding it harder to get down there than pedestrians and cyclists, but I want to have it done in a green way that keeps the character of that area. Thank you.
It's great to have, four such eloquent sets of answers. I'm sure you'll agree. Being a councillor is an onerous task, and I think standing up here is as hard as it gets to start off with. So, I do think we should be very appreciative of all these gentlemen here tonight for doing this. My second and final question before we have a break. And if I could ask everyone to maybe just do it in 60 seconds really briefly, as we come. I'm being so polite. Otherwise I'm going to have to stand up and start pointing. But we've obviously, most of what we've heard tonight has been quite personal, and that's terrific, and that's how it should be, but I wanted to make sure this issue was covered as well. So my second question is, why do we need a councillor from your particular party? And would you ever ignore your own party line? And we're going to start off with Carpen.
Right, so for the first half of the question, I just wanted to say particularly that I'm incredibly proud to be standing as a Liberal Democrat candidate in Queen Edith's ward. The Liberal Democrats have got a fantastic history of serving this community, and I'm really glad that so many people have made me welcome. In particular, I wanted to say thank you to Councillor Tim Moore, who's going to be retiring on Thursday next week. He sets the bar incredibly high for me, and I think that if I were to win, I would take that responsibility extremely seriously. Now, in terms of Lib Dem policies, I'm going to give you an example right now of one that I will be working to adjust. And that is because in those manifestos available to you out there, we're currently supporting the City Council and Combined Authorities policy of a clean air zone. We're still on. A clean air zone, that's fine, I want that, we've mentioned, we talked about that. But it's a policy, a platitude lacking in policy detail. I'm impatient for those improvements to come through. I'm impatient for the low energy buses and taxis that they promise. And I don't want a low energy bus because that's hinting at a hybrid. And a hybrid bus is not good enough. I don't want to see a bus that's got an internal combustion engine in it because they're promising you that in 2031. Market forces alone are going to fix that for you without the council lifting a finger, so that is not good enough. I'm impatient. I would support a policy that would challenge the council to work harder and set more challenging, more optimistic policies to reduce pollution.
Okay, the dreaded question where you're now on video saying, yeah, Lewis, I'm going to be a rebel, I'm going to break the whip if I'm elected. But here goes. It might be the last you see of me. No, I'm only joking. So, why the Labour Party in the first place? There's something on the back of the card of the Labour Party membership. The back of the Labour Party membership card, should I say. And it says, by the strength of our common endeavour, we achieve far more than we do alone. And that for me is kind of at the very heartbeat of my political belief, that it's about pulling together with other people. Collectivisation is a socialist term, and I do believe that actually by pulling together, by collectivising, you can achieve some amazing things. And I think locally we've seen that, where we have had activists, we have had residents who have pulled together and achieved something quite incredible just this week with 291 Hills Road. So why would I be your councillor? Why do I think it's important that you could have a Labour councillor in this ward? Well, at the moment we know that this generally is seen as being a very safe Liberal Democrat ward. That people who are Liberal Democrat are a lot more likely to be elected, and I'm only going on data for the last few years, and that is factual. But I think it would be healthy to have a different party, Labour. Because if you did, you'd have a free market of ideas, where people would be able to challenge sometimes the status quo that you can't always see when you're in the same party as each other. And I think it would be healthy to have that discussion debate, because I think it would encourage local democracy and be a lot healthier for everybody. Now, would I not completely follow the party line? Well, in 2013 I did go against it when it came to Warts Causeway. I believe that development should not come at the expense of greenbelt land. Cambridge is fairly unique to have a greenbelt, and that should be protected at all times. So that is something I've done in the past. In the future, just to address a point that Colin raised, he set the challenge to all of us to answer this question about the mobility and the expense. I know that the County Council reduced funding for that. We didn't find the private investment, and I think you're right, it is too high. So I have already had meetings with people in the Labour Party, with Lewis, to talk about how I think that should be changed and should be brought down. Because I'm not actually partisan, as you might think. I think there's common sense. It's about listening to communities, and sometimes parties make mistakes. And I think if a party doesn't do that, and doesn't reflect on itself, then it can get itself into trouble. And finally, I honestly believe that in local elections, the individual is really important to the person you choose. I have not attacked any other parties when it comes to my literature or anything else. I'm not talking about national issues. I'm only talking about the local issues that matter here to us. And that's what I'm standing to be elected on.
The Green Party is locally the only party of opposition, both within the ward and potentially at the council level. And it is that outsider view that I think the Green Party offers. Would I stand against the whip of the party? The party doesn't have a whip. They give free hand to our councillors to be independent and to respond to their local residents' needs.
In fact, I do appreciate the question you've raised this time. I wish you asked the same question last year as well. It would have been more interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, to bring some changes in the community, you need elected leaders at the top. Conservative Party is the only party. We have 3 very influential regional leaders in Cambridgeshire. To start with Queen Edith, we have a local MP, Heidi Ellen. She represents South Cambridgeshire, which includes Queen Edith. Labour and Lib Dem, they never had and they will never have a local MP here. So they cannot bring some changes. Second, it's very important, Police and Crime Commissioner, to tackle crimes, burglaries, thefts. The Police and Crime Commissioner, he represents Conservative Party and he is working for Cambridgeshire, including Queen Edith. So who is better than him to tackle the issue? Now, third, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Mayor. He is extremely influential regional power and he has a lot of power in his discretion as well to bring some changes in Queen Edith. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you voted for Lib Dem for years. I don't think they have brought any changes in the community. With due respect, they're not bad, they're very efficient. I have a lot of respect for George, Amanda and Colin, new candidate, although he's not local. I don't know why Lib Dem couldn't find local guys. So it is very important to have a local candidate who understands the local issues and raised here so that he can feel the local problems. And with the regional powers that we have, if you have local issues, we can take it up with regional heads. For example, when I took up the burglaries issue with Police and Crime Commissioner, he straight away responded to me. So is Heidi. And they have immediately responded. They said, Manas, go ahead, organize a community meeting. We will come and address your community to understand what they need and what can be done for them. I have met this week our Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Mayor in his office. He has personally assured that if need be, he is happy to come and meet Queen Edith's residents to explain his plan for housing, his plan for transport, and also the train station at Edinburgh. So I would say it is much easier if you have local councillor from Conservative Party to have a wonderful synergy with Conservative Party at the centre, and the people who benefit most from this is the Queen Edith residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Some enlightening statements there. So that's it for the first half. We take a 5 or 10 minute break. 2 things for you to do. One is to help yourself to tea, coffee and cake. It's all on the house. Please do. It's terrific. And secondly, if you have questions you want